Inspired talks of Swami Vivekananda. Om Namah Shri Yatirajaya Vivekananda Surai Sachit Sukha Swarupaya Swami Tapaharine. It was Sunday, July 21, 1895. Swamiji was talking to the disciples who were with him at Thousand Island Parks about yoga, Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. Before we get into what Swamiji was telling, just let me give you a little background story. Those of you who have just heard of Bhagwan Buddha, Gautam Buddha, and know even a bit about him would know that he was Prince Siddharth, and when he was around 30, he left his wife and newborn baby and went out in search of the eternal amidst non eternal, the fixed amidst the revolving. And you know that initially he got into austerities, and then he realized that these austerities are not going to take him anywhere. But those austerities purified his mind and purified his attachment to the world. And then he moved on. He was in Rajgir, and then he went to Bodh Gaya, and there he sat under a Bodhi tree. Those of you who are curious about Bhagwan Buddha's life would know that what Bhagwan Buddha was doing, starting from his days as a prince, he was initially leading the life of a noble householder. And from there, he went into learning. And from learning, he went into austerities. And from austerities, he went into Hatha Yoga. From Hatha Yoga, he finally settled at Yoga. So it was ultimately it was Yoga that gave him the realization. Neither Hatha Yoga nor general discussions, not even austerities. It is believed that later on Patanjali, the great sage, he codified the yoga philosophy. But yoga was prevalent in India thousands and thousands of years before Buddha came. And the words that Bhagwan Buddha has used, like nirvana, these were very common in India. It's that the Western scholars do not have any idea about these things, and so they keep on thinking that he coined the term. Lord Buddha never coined any term. Now, if you look at the whole thing, what exactly is happening? If we try to understand the whole thing from our perspective, it's a very interesting thing what happened. Since our childhood, we have been trained to learn and think. That means we have learned to take in things with the help of our mind, through our mind. Whatever comes to us, they come through senses. And we have a repository of memories. We also get certain inputs from dreams. And all these things combined remain in our mind, whatever that might be. We'll be discussing that. So we think that we can understand everything about existence through our mind. And we are right in that. Because We are bound by our physical body, the body that we have. We know only our body, we only know the world in which we live, that is, that we can take through our five senses. And we know that if we have to understand our body, if we have to understand the world, if we have to understand the relations, mind, mind is everything. Scientists, they also think the same way, whether it be physics or chemistry or biology, whatever that be. Then there are mathematicians, they say that they understand only numbers. Unless it something comes in equation form, they're not ready to believe it. What is mind? How far it can go? Those of you who are truly interested in this, I'll request them to watch our series Raj Yoga. It is there in English, it's there in Bengali too. Raj Yoga. Yeah, 30 odd talks. I don't remember the exact number. And you should listen if you are interested in the subject, because there we have discussed the whole of Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. And in the beginning, we have discussed what is yoga, and then what is mind, an overview of mind, and the limits of mind. The most important thing is what we are discussing here is that mind has limits. And yoga discusses in detail the limits of the mind. And yet it says that you achieve only one thing when you transcend mind. Till then, everything is within the realm of mind. Everything is within the realm of mind. So, yoga or any other system, it doesn't say that you negate mind, because everything you want to achieve will be through mind. And finally, when you make the final leap, which only rare few can make, maybe in a century, one or two in a century, not more than that, they need to transcend the mind. That also you do with the help of mind only. Now, in one sentence, if you want to know, in one sentence, yoga philosophy is about the study of mind, what it is, how it works, what are its powers, what are its capabilities, and what happens when you transcend it. So, is yoga psychology? No, it is not. Yoga is not psychology. Well, normally we think that anything that discusses mind is psychology. Yoga is not psychology. What happens is, imagine thousands of years ago, maybe 7, 8, 10,000 years ago, sages living on the banks of Indus, on the banks of Saraswati, and moving slowly eastward, living on the banks of Ganga, Jamuna, like the great sage Vyasa. He lived on the banks of Jamuna. There were sages who had mastered the Vedas, which means they were scholar, they knew things. And they were unfettered by the bonds of family. That means they were not monks. They did have families, but they were not going all out to enjoy the world. Enjoyment was in limit, and enjoyment should always be in limit. One should never cross the limit. These minds, apart from their scholarship, apart from their purity, unselfishness, they were contemplative. As they contemplated, their minds became more and more concentrated, more and more powerful. And suddenly, they could, as if, remove the layers from existence. Here is my pen. Pen has an existence. It also has layers. Under normal conditions, a common man will not understand that. A scientist will not understand that. However, those who have some understanding of psychology would know that pain is a bundle of sensations. What these sages did was that they peeled off those coverings. They didn't stop. They went on and on and on. Spirituality is not like physical sciences where you reach a point and then you say that it's over. I have reached. There is absolutely no end to spirituality. Absolutely no end to spirituality. You can you go on and on and on. Normally you think that you realize Atman, Aham Brahmasmi. So no, it's not over. Sri Ramakrishna, God incarnate. We worship him as God. He used to say that, look, Mother of the universe is still taking me through more and more realizations. Imagine, one was God who had come in human body on this earth, who had done all kinds of sadhana, which has never been recorded earlier in the history of human spirituality. He explored the oneness that one experiences in Advaita. And then he went through myriads, hundreds and thousands of experiences when that divine expresses itself in the empire of the mind. So there is the empire of the mind, which we mentioned and which we are going to discuss. And then there is divine, pure consciousness. That pure consciousness, when it appears in the empire of the mind, how it looks. There is no end to it. Think of a sun and think of a room of mirrors, a wall of mirrors. You can have any number of mirrors you want. Depending on the number of mirrors, you'll have different images. Even though you know the sun, you can go on watching the different reflections. Or gold. You may know about gold, but there's no end, just no end to the number of jewelry that can be made out of it. The new designs and more designs. Uh, Recently, I met one young boy, Dipendu Ghosh. He's not even class 10 pass, I think. He told something like that. I don't remember exactly. And he is into this job of the goldsmith, designs jewelry. He showed me his designs and he said he makes the designs himself. Not that he copies from here and there. And they were stunning. An ordinary boy coming from an ordinary background and coming up with beautiful designs. Of course, I've never possessed any jewelry in my life, nor gifted any to any. Never. No possibility being a monk. But I could appreciate the beauty of those designs. And the first thing that came to my mind was, you see the capability of human mind. It can go on exploring and exploring and exploring. And just imagine when the divine is in this empire of mind, divine is appearing. How much you can explore? You can just go on exploring. There will be no end to it. So here is a sage, and then the sage, then the sage, who says, well, I had enough of this exploration. I want to go and see what happens when the mind becomes still. He succeeds in stilling his mind, which is not an easy thing. We have discussed it earlier many times. We have also discussed in Raj Yogi, if you listen to those talks. Mind becomes still, and suddenly he realizes that Mind becomes no mind when mind becomes still. Mind is mind is no more a mind. Once mind becomes still, there is no more a mind. There's no mind. And the sage could experience consciousness even in that state. Dear listeners, just imagine the shock. Just imagine the shock that that sage must have had. I found that mind had become still completely. And an entirely different kind of reality dawns upon him. For the detail, you will have to listen to our talks on Raj Yoga. After experiencing the grandeur, the beauty, the sweetness of that existence, most most sages, most people do not come back. Rare few come back. They narrate their experiences, but they cannot. Because what they experience in that state of no mind cannot be explained in words here. And once they described and once they talked about the steps that are needed, first to make your mind more concentrated, so that you can peel off the layers. And finally, you reach the state where you can still the mind completely and you experience. And then they say, this is the way, as Bhagavan Buddha said. Bhagavan Buddha said the same thing. This is the way, dharma. And we are discussing here mind, it only yoga. We are not discussing spirituality in general because different sages will take different paths. That's obvious. Depending on what kind of path he had taken, they will describe that path. For example, Jesus, Lord Jesus, he took one path and he describes that path. Same about Prophet Muhammad. Same about, say, Lord Buddha. But Hindu religion is not founded by one sage. It's not the words of one sage. We have many such sages. So naturally, we have many paths. There are people who worship idols, vigraha, and there are people who do not. There are people who consider it a religious duty to eat meat, and there are people that is shaktas, and there are people who do not eat meat because Hinduism is a vast religion. It's a supermarket, super mall of spirituality, whereas other religions they are just like shops. But every religion fulfills the spiritual needs of its followers, so you don't need supermarket everywhere. One shop is enough. That's of course different point here. What we are discussing is the tradition of yoga. Now, what we get today as yoga is partly the way and partly as the philosophy to explain the Vedic truth. The yoga system of philosophy believes that this is what the Vedas teach: spiritual freedom. How to attain that spiritual freedom? Yoga Sutras go systematically show that this is the way. And those of you who have studied a bit of yoga, and otherwise, if you just listen to our talks on Raj Yoga, see that there are 8 steps: Yam, Niyam, Asan, Pranayam, Pratyahar, Dharana, Dhyan, Samadhi. First, there are moral, ethical practices. Then There is a need to be firm. You need to be steady. That means you should be able to sit quietly for a long time. And you should be able to focus your mind. And that is when the objects start revealing their nature. That means the coverings that there are, they start getting peeled away. So, with that, with this very short introduction to what yoga is, we go to what Swamiji was telling. Now, Raj Yoga, you'll find Raj Yoga series of talks. That's also based on what Swamiji had discussed in Raj Yoga. And here Swamiji talked about yoga just one day. It comes barely in one page. But Swamiji was a master. He was a real master. If he talked about the same subject on two consecutive days, the essence would remain the same. The description would differ. That is what a great master is about. The essence always remains the same. The description changes. Then you know that he is a master. Swamiji was a master. Not repeating the same thing. Not even repeating the same idea. So let's see how Swamiji describes it. So yoga is the science of restraining the chit, the mind, from breaking into vrittis. The second sutra of yoga says, Yoga chitta vritti nirodha. Mind. Now we cannot discuss mind here in such a short time. Those of you who are interested, I request you again to just listen to our talks on Raj Yoga. And vritti is the modifications that we have in the mind. Swamiji explains beautifully. Mind is a mixture of sensation and feelings, that is, action and reaction. Whatever the mind is, which neither we can explain what mind is, nor scientists can explain. But we know what mind is. We also know what's the difference between a powerful mind and a weak mind, focused mind, unfocused mind, scattered mind, focused mind. We know all this. There is some amount of subjectivity involved in understanding the mind, although mind is an objective thing. And that is what makes a study of mind slightly difficult, because there's the meeting ground of subjective and objective. Had it been purely subjective, you could have said, being subjective, we cannot explain. Had it been purely objective, you could have explained. But it's a junction of subjectivity and objectivity. So we know that there is action, there is also a reaction in the mind. We have data coming from five senses. We have data coming from memory, from dreams, from imaginations, from false perceptions. And mind keeps reacting and keeps reacting. Sometimes it instructs the limbs to behave in one way or other. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it expresses itself, sometimes it doesn't. So it's sensations and feelings, action and reaction. Now, since it's in a continuous flux, mind has to stay in a continuous state of flux. Even when you're in deep sleep, mind is active. Because a non-active mind is an oxymoron. It's a contradiction. Mind has to be active. We can make the mind focused, but we cannot still it completely. Just not possible. And since it is continuously in motion, it it cannot be permanent. Anything that keeps changing, how can you say it to be permanent? And the search of all religion, the search of all spirituality is the one permanent. I'll tell you something very interesting, not related to this subject. That during one of the earlier talks of Swami Vivekananda, when he was talking at Chicago, he was talking about the importance of oneness and how spirituality leads to one. And he says, the day physics finds one force that gives rise to all other forces, that chemistry finds that one chemical that gives rise to all other chemicals, that day, search of physics, search of chemistry will stop. So he says that in that sense, science and religion, they are one and the same. Search for oneness. However, in case of physics, it search for the one force. Now, when I was young, I read this sentence, liked this sentence, and understood nothing of this sentence. And much later, I got interested a bit in physics. I'm not a student of physics, I'm interested. So then I found that physics accepts four fundamental forces. You can check it on internet. And scientists have been in search of that one force which can combine these four fundamental forces like gravitational force and weak nuclear force, weak electrical force, strong force, etc. I was surprised. I was surprised that look, here is physics. Indeed, trying to find the unifying force. Then when 70, 80, or 60 years after Swamiji passed away, or whatever, even if it's 30 years, doesn't matter. Now, what Swamiji was talking intuitively, because when Swami Vivekananda was there was only force was the way we understand mechanical force and electrical force a bit, not fully. And there was this heat energy, etc., etc., but not the way physics understands force now. This is the power of intuitive thinking. So it's about unity. Unity means there will be no variety. And yet, it will be the repository of everything. When you find that one fundamental force which gives rise to four forces, four fundamental forces in the universe, and forces which ultimately fan out in the universe as different forces. So that one single force, the master, there is some kind of stillness about it. Yet, it contains all the other forces. Same with the chemical. Same with the chemical that can give birth to all the other chemicals. Yes, I read in one of those physics books that once they started finding fundamental particles, it was electron, proton, neutron, and they thought that these are the three fundamental particles. And from there, they found that there were more. There was positron, and one after, and then there were more than 60, 64, and a number of particles went on and going shooting up. And scientists said, well, these cannot be fundamental particles. How can you have so many fundamental particles? Similarly, then they stumbled upon quarks. And they say that quarks are of six kinds. I mean, We don't know how advanced physics is in solving the riddle of oneness. And now I have stopped reading. I understood that being a layman, I cannot keep pace with them. They come up with an idea, and after some time, someone else contradicts them. This is what kind of science is this? I don't know. Anyway, bottom line is if there is multiplicity, particularly one changing into the other, it cannot be permanent. The fundamental definition, fundamental principle of permanency. Raj Yoga discusses in detail that why mind is not permanent. Spirituality is the search for permanent. Christian spirituality is about the search of permanence. And it finds that in Jesus and God. Same with Islam, same with Buddhism, same with Hinduism. It has been very beautifully expressed in the famous mantra in Kathopanishad. Kathopanishad talks are also there. You can see that in the playlist. Nityo Nityanam Chetnas Chetananam. Eternal amidst non-eternal. The mind has a fine body, and through this, it works on the gross body. Naturally, this question will arise in your mind. What Swamiji is talking, mind having a body. Actually, it is like this. And for that, please listen to our yoga talks, and there we have discussed more and more. So, what actually we Hindus say, because sages have experienced it, it's nothing theoretical. Here is this physical body, behind it, there is a subtle body, and behind this subtler body, which is known as causal body, and beyond that, there is pure Atman. Mind regulates all the three: the physical, the subtle, and the causal. Well, that's a different subject, so we are not going into the detail. Now, what Swamiji here is the beauty of Swami Vivekananda. Swami Vivekananda was a great synthesizer, synthesized different streams of philosophy. The three Vyas, Shankara, that is Shankaracharya, and Swami Vivekananda. Swami Vivekananda, whenever I take Swami Vivekananda's name, Sri Ramakrishna is automatically implied in that. Vedanta says that behind the mind is a real self. There is no need to bring in Vedanta here. Absolutely no, because yoga, yoga goes against Vedanta and Vedanta goes against yoga, but not Swamiji. Because Swami Vivekananda, he can see the complete picture. Whenever he can see the complete picture, he knows that yoga and Vedanta, they are same. When yoga talks about consciousness as purusha, individual consciousness, Vedanta talks about one undivided consciousness. Swamiji knows that they are actually talking about the same thing. However, here we are not discussing the relative merits of yoga and Vedanta. Just know that they are not different. It accepts the other two, but poses a third, the eternal, the ultimate, the last analysis, the unit, where there is no further compound. So Vedanta accepts both mind, Purusha, but it also believes one eternal, absolutely eternal thing, which is ultimate, where where there is no multiplicity. It is difficult for me to give any example to explain this idea, but those of you who have some background of physics can think. Imagine, imagine some scientist someday coming up with an idea that there is pure energy And that pure energy cannot be explained, pure energy. The little that can be understood is as quarks. Atman and Purusha, that's the relation they have. Atman is one undivided consciousness. Purush is that one undivided consciousness perceived as pure consciousness, say in yoga philosophy. Now, why this difference? The difference will always be there. There's just no way that you can say what exactly happens and remains beyond mind. Because what we are discussing here is beyond mind. I don't know if you are finding it difficult. I'm sure if you listen to Rajyog talks and listen to this talk once again, ideas will become clear. There is no further compound. This is the thing. There is no further compound. There cannot be any more two. No multiplicity, no duality, nothing. This is Advait. It's not even one. It is beyond one, beyond two, beyond zero, non dual. And how it sees birth and death. Birth is recomposition, death is decomposition. And the final analysis where Atman is found, there being no further division possible, the perdurable is reached. Perdurable means that which cannot be divided any further. What Swami Vivekananda is teaching is talking about, not something theoretical. Is not quoting some scripture. Although you'll find these things in scriptures. But these come straight from realization. Dear viewers, as far as I am concerned, this is something that I keep telling to you. I've told it many times. If Sri Ramakrishna had not come, Sri Ramakrishna and Swami Vivekananda, and if I had studied Upanishads and Gita, I would have told, oh, what noble thoughts, what wonderful thoughts. If I had studied yoga, I would have said, oh, what a wonderful analysis of mind. But Sri Ramakrishna changed everything forever. He was not really a scholar. He had not studied scriptures. He studied script. He listened to the scriptures because he could barely read or write. He had a very rudimentary education. But he realized things directly. Prophet Muhammad, he did the same thing. He realized directly. And Sri Ramakrishna, after having so many different kinds of realization, he wanted to know what these scriptures are, what these scriptures contain. And then one after another scholars came and he learned, he came to know about the essence of those scriptures. So he knew those scriptures, what these scriptures talk, but not in a traditional way. So because of that, Upanishads are no more a sublime thought for me, they are reality. Same with Gita, same with Yoga, or for that matter, any of these Hindu scriptures. However, there is a difference between, say, Upanishads and Puranas. The philosophical truth of the Upanishads have been narrated as stories. The moment you bring in stories, there will be fantastical descriptions that you have to accept. But as far as the philosophical truths, spiritual truths are concerned, they are uncompromised. What yoga philosophy says, what Swamiji is telling here, these are not flights of fancies. It's not even philosophy in the traditional sense. It's just the narration of spiritual truths. You go for it. You practice yamaniyam. You practice moral and ethical values. Purify yourself. Learn to sit firm and train your mind to focus on an object. You too will get these results. So, then how can it be philosophy? It's just reality, it's truth. We know it. Swamiji just explaining what yoga is essentially, and he talks of yoga and Vedanta in one breath because for him these are all same. The whole ocean is present at the back of each wave, and all manifestations are waves, some very big, some small. Yet all are the ocean in their essence, the whole ocean. But as waves, each is a part. This example Swamiji used many times, ocean and the wave. Kabir Das was a great poet, Kabir Das, and he also belonged to Advaita school of reality. He has left a big treasure house of wisdom for us. It says, Daryab ki lahar daryab hai ji. Wave of a river, same as a river. There's no difference between the two. Swami used the expression ocean. There's no difference between ocean and the wave. Those of you who have seen an ocean know that every time you watch a wave, you see a wave rises, falls, merges into an ocean. It gives rise to another wave. Now, as waves, they are different, no doubt. But even when it's a wave, it's a single wave. The power of the whole ocean behind it. The wave may think foolishly. It has an individuality of this much. The fact remains, it has the power, strength, and everything of the entire ocean. As ocean, it is not different from another wave, but as wave, it is different. This is what Advaita Vedanta is about. As Atman, me and you, we are same. As body-mind complex, I'm different from you. The whole of existence, the existence that there can be, is behind me, is behind you too. But as an individual, I am different from you. When the waves are stilled, then all is one. A spectator without a spectacle, says Patanjali. Swamiji could use such beautiful language. Spectator without a spectacle. Drashta drishya, that's the expression Patanjali uses in yoga. There is no more drishya. Drishya, scenery, is spectacle. What we are looking, when we are looking at the world, we are charmed by the beauties of this world. We don't realize it's a spectacle. You call it Maya, call it magic, call it whatever you want to say. The fact remains, we all want gold, wealth, and we all want to enjoy life in various form. And we want to be recognized. There is that famous Maslow chart where it says that initially you want money, and as you grow up, you want recognition, etc., etc. I don't, of course, agree with what Maslow said, but uh, Western management is based on Maslow's principles. These Americans, they love to teach others. So, whatever you call, it's ultimately a spectacle. And who is watching? Atman is watching. And you yourself are a spectacle along with this whole world. You are also a spectacle to yourself. Pure consciousness, which alone can observe, observes you too along with the world. And you are a spectacle. Surprisingly, sometimes you'll see that sometimes kids, 3 or 4 year old, when they have just learned how to speak and how to identify themselves, and they talk about themselves as in third person. So, like once one kid had come to meet me, hardly, barely 3 year old, with his parents, and he was shouting and screaming all the way. Only Babu, Babu means small kid, will go to Maharaj, no one else will go. He was not saying, only I will go. He's saying Babu will go. Because he has heard others calling him Babu. Babu means sweet kid. I loved it. Because when we were kids, we also use this third person, expression of third person, for ourselves. And as we grow and as we grew, you become identified more and more with I. Surprisingly, when you become spiritual, you realize that actually this body mind complex is a third person singular he. So sometimes, these monks and those who are into neo spirituality, they start talking about this body. Sometimes they ask us, so where is this body from? That means where you were born. So I find it so funny. Why can't you just be straight? If a person like Ramana Maharshi or Sri Ramakrishna, they can see body as separate from Atman, that's a different thing. Okay, it's fine. I mean, sometimes these things sound pretty comic. This is what Swami says. Spectator without a spectacle. Just imagine. So, how do you live? If there is no spectacle, how will you live? Won't you get bored? No, you won't. Because mind gets bored, Atman doesn't. The problem of getting bored, when you say that I want engagement, you say I am getting bored, it's about mind. It is in the nature of mind to remain occupied. It's in the nature of mind to look for variety. If a mind cannot stay occupied, or if it is to do something repetitive, it gets bored. Atman, Atman enjoys being by itself because all purity, all joy, all knowledge, all existence is in Atman. When the mind is active, the Atman is mixed up with it. So that's the problem. Once there is creation, once there is a body always means mind. We are not talking about a body of a stone, we are talking about body of a living being, his mind. And mind and Atman, it gets mixed up for whatever reason. Consciousness and inertness, they get mixed up. Because they get mixed up, this world is generated. Earth. Earth is so beautiful. Water is so beautiful. Mix them. Mud is created. Consciousness is good enough. Mind is good enough. Mix them. This world is created. The repetition of all forms in quick succession is memory. So I think Ms Waldo was taking notes, must have missed points here because if she has written about memory, Swamiji must have talked about the different things of mind. Basically, it's about mental states, five mental states. It's about right knowledge, praman, viparya, where you get false perception, vikalp, where you go on imagining, and or viparya is imagination, false knowledge, and absolutely no object being there, and there is dream and there is memory. So memory is described as the repetition of old forms in quick succession. So when you try to remember something, things move very fast. Actually, things did not move so fast when you were experiencing it. So forms, they can be made to move in front of you at any speed, sometimes slow, sometimes fast. Sometimes when you love some memories, you want to make those forms move slowly, those frames move slowly. And things you don't like, you make those frames move fast. So wherever you want to dwell, that frame becomes slow. Be unattached. Knowledge is power, and getting one, you get the other. If you get knowledge, you get power. By knowledge, you can even banish the material world. Here comes yoga. You have to be detached. You have to learn not to be attached. We will be discussing more of this. What's the ultimate of knowledge? You can banish the world. You can banish the world. Those of you who are familiar with Greek mythology, I read it long ago, so I don't remember the names correctly. So there is that female Medusa, who is basically a hydra, kind of hydra. It's some kind of serpent-like thing. And if you look at it, you become a stone. And Hercules has to kill that. Or he takes a mirror and looks at the reflection image and cuts off the head. Those of you might have read my book, Kratu. So there is a character, Mrini, there, who is a beautiful bird in daytime. It's a deadly snake at night, deadly. Anyone who sees its form has to die. Now, supposing you come to know that a friend of yours or someone whom you love dearly is actually some kind of Mrini, will you continue with that? No. If you know that a particular bank note in your pocket of 100 rupees, 500 rupees is fake, counterfeit, what will you do? First thing you do is you keep it carefully, and once you go to a temple, there you put it in pranami box. You don't want to waste. Normally, people see once you know that it's a fake, what you should do? Tear it up, finished. But no, we are so attached with wealth, money. We won't let it go waste. If we know that we may get caught, so what we do is we go to a temple and put it in a pranami box. thinking that God is foolish enough to accept that fake note and create punya for us. No, God is not that big a fool. The idea is once you know that it's a fake, it's a counterfeit, you want to get rid of it. Once you know that this whole of nature is a counterfeit, you have been tricked into it, you have been faked into it, then what happens? Say, I need to get out of this. I need to get out of this. In India, it's a very unfortunate thing, and we indeed feel ashamed talking of this. Sometimes there is baby swapping in hospitals. Or sometimes by mistake there is a baby swapping. Both. Say, mom may go on loving a baby, and once she realizes that it is not her baby, there is a baby swap, immediately she wants to get rid and get her own baby. Knowledge. Knowledge. Actually, you cannot be detached. You cannot be unattached unless you have knowledge. You need to have knowledge to be detached. I don't want this. You must have this knowledge. How can you be detached? People come. So here is Atanu Roy, how to implement meditation in my daily life. Every time, anywhere, my God, even I cannot do it, Atanu Roy. Of course, I'm not a master at that. Every time, anywhere, Atanu Roy, how to implement meditation. Work very hard, work very hard, work hard. Be a master of crores of be a billionaire. And then after that, learn how to detach yourself. Do unselfishness. Come to me, then I'll teach you meditation. Meditation is not meant for the weak. Meditation is meant for the strong, the powerful. You have to have vigor, tej. Gita repeatedly talks about tej. Tej as a divine quality. Unless you have tej, unless you have power, religion, spirituality, and meditation, they are not made for namby-pambis. Do you have the power to create billionaires? Do you have the power to make the society dance? Right? You're snapping a finger. Do you have? If you have, you can. You don't have, you cannot meditate. Sorry. It's not meant for you because spirituality, spirituality is meant for the brave. You will say, you may take names of this and that person and say, take the case of Tulsidas. He, he lost his parents when he was very young. He was practically brought up as an orphan. But he grew up to be a scholar. And he had a marriage with a beautiful woman, Ratnavali. And he was passionately in love with Ratnavali. So here he was Tulsidas, a great scholar. Well, that's what we get in his biography, in his stories. And he was so obsessed of Ratnavali that once when Ratnavali went to her father's house for 2-3 days, Tulsidas could not stay. He ran. See the passion. See the passion. Probably you also have that passion. And he swam across the flooded river to reach Ratna. And when he reached Ratnavali, saying, see, I have come. Ratnavali, semi jokingly told, oh, if only you had so much of love for Sri Rama, you'd have seen Sri Rama. And that is when the inner vigor, inner fire came into play. And that very moment, he gave up his attachment. This is Tej. So, was it Ratna's words that changed Tulsidas's life? Never. Most of you who are listening to our talks would have known how you have been humiliated by your beloved so many times. Does anything happen to you? Nothing happens. Definitely not to me. I've been scolded so many times by so many. Nothing happens. You have to have that fire. You have to have that vigor. And then what happens? Just give a kick, become a saint, and write an immortal work like Ramcharitmanas. So, dear Mr. Atanu, no, this is not the way to meditation. First have strength, first have power, have vigor. When you can mentally get rid of one quality after another from any object until all are gone, you can actually make the object itself disappear from your consciousness. Actually, we will have to explain this point, but if you listen to our Raj Yoga talks where different kinds of samadhis are discussed, where we talk about early stages of samadhi, there this has been discussed, but we will take it up in our next talk. Thank you. Next week.